I was a Miami Dolphins cheerleader for 3 seasons, and that was very pivotal for me because it launched my journalism career. When I really realized that fame and money were not everything, because at the time, I was getting a lot of notoriety, not in the way that I wanted. I was miserable. I was questioning my life. I was questioning if I wanted to even continue. And I knew that I needed to get myself out of it, or else it would be a very horrible outcome.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another fantastic fireside chat. And today I have a special guest, near and dear to my heart. I've known her for I can't even. We'll figure out how long I've known her for, but it's been a while. And she's been in sports broadcasting, blockchain, speaker, consultant, media extraordinaire. Let's just get right into it. Miss Andrea Ocampo Gallo, how are we doing today?
I'm doing amazing. I told you I was giddy to make this happen because it's been long overdue.
I know. It's been a while. We've always talked about, especially with you, your media background and just helping others get their story out there. And it's always been a challenge for me. And now that I've kind of been in this momentum, I was like, oh my God, I need to have this conversation with Andrea, see what comes from it, see what greatness comes from it. I know we had a catch up last week. It's been a while. And every time we converge again, it's just like the story just unravels. So for those that don't know you, if you can, just share a little bit about your background and what you bring to this, what light you bring to this world.
So overall, I've been in broadcast media for the last 20-something years. I've always wanted to be a journalist since I was a kid. I looked up to Barbara Walters, and that kind of just frames where my mind was at. I always wanted to tell stories, and I didn't know when I was a kid that's what I wanted to do. But I went to school for journalism, and I knew I wanted to just tell other people's stories. And that actually transformed into something a lot bigger. When you're in the entertainment industry and when you're trying to make a name for yourself, I found myself doing a little bit of everything. I became a professional dancer. Go Dolphins. Yes, I was a Miami Dolphins cheerleader for 3 seasons, and that was very pivotal for me because it launched my journalism career. I knew I wanted to be in that space, and at the time I was 19. I was young and alive, and
5 years ago, right?
Yeah, 5 years ago. But that was a really pivotal moment in my life, just because that really opened up a lot of doors. And then from there, I became a national spokesperson for Zumba for 2 years. I always wanted to dance, so I was like, how can I combine my dancing career with my broadcasting career? And then Zumba came along, and they're like, we're looking for a bilingual spokesperson to teach people how to dance, stay healthy, and do it in Spanish and English. And I was like,
say no more.
You found the right person. So I was dancing with Tony the Tiger for 2 seasons.
Oh, wow.
I know, for 2 seasons.
That's great.
It was hysterical. We did a national tour for 2 years, and it was super cool. I like to give context because people think it's glamorous, but they would open a huge semi, and that semi, like a transformer, would open to a stage. And then we would park at Walmarts all over the U.S. because that was their partnership. And then Tony the Tiger would come out, and I would come out with a little microphone.
Frosted Flakes, Okay, so that great. It was relevant.
Great contact. So I did that for 2 years, in addition to trying to get my foot in the door in the world of broadcasting, red carpets, entertainment. And then I worked with the Miami Dolphins, the WWE, the Florida Panthers as their arena host. In my 4th season, I became their Hispanic marketing director. That's around the time that I realized how important social media was. Yeah. And just being in this amazing industry of media, you really have to do a little bit of everything. So fast forward 15 years later, here I am still. I have my media agency, HBU Media, where I produce TV shows at the highest level. I'm currently working with Dr. Drew, and there's an amazing show that I'm working with him on, in addition to a lot of other ones. And just right now, I'm in a place of gratitude because staying in this industry is challenging, but I find myself knowing that this is where I belong, and I always want to be 5 steps ahead of absolutely everything. You name it, I've probably done it in the industry in regards to creation. In front of the camera, behind the camera, and right now for me is all about freedom and creation.
Absolutely. So You hit a lot of talking points.
I did. I went boom,
I know.
boom, boom,
I'm
boom.
like, which way am I going to take this? You said, you know, you
I mean,
gotta
we
give-
have to talk about Tony the Tiger.
Of course.
Hello.
It's great. It's great. So, you know, context, right? Content is king, but the context, that's what's queen. And we've known each other for a long time. And I mean, there's so many ways that could take this conversation, even piggybacking from when we met at that coffee shop just a couple days ago.
Yeah.
And you've touched a couple points, and your journey through life with what I was talking about previously, where you said, oh, do you talk about this on your podcast? I'm like, well, the pod isn't necessarily an interview. It's us co-creating together and creating a space where people can observe our conversations and learn from it. And we spoke about the levels of consciousness. This is a journey through life where you go from being a part of an ecosystem, an organization as a cog in a machine, and then stepping out and taking your success into your own hands. And then eventually you go from, oh, money isn't everything, and I want to build community. And I hear it in your story, and I've known you, and this story is still being written. And where, you know, with the conversation that you previously had on the previous podcast you were on, when they were talking about the WWE, and they made this clickbait title. If you can share the clickbait title and a little bit of context to that, because it's going to lead to my next question.
Of course. So it's so interesting because I'm in a journey right now where I want to be very honest with my content creation. And I think now is more important than ever because I think authenticity is literally king. Just because now everybody has a podcast, everybody has content creation in one way or another. Obviously, there's AI, mirrors of oneself. So I think right now we're really craving a lot of honesty. And for me, that always was a little scary.
Yeah.
Because just coming from a world of broadcast, curation was always perfect, and you needed to, and back in the day when I started this world, you needed to be perfect, right? And thank goodness along the way, we realized that perfection doesn't sell, but you get programmed to speak a certain way, right? When you're doing the news, when I was in sports, you had to look a certain way, you had to deliver a certain way. And even with the Miami Dolphins, what an amazing experience, but we all look the same on the field, right?
Especially from the nosebleed. You're looking down, you're like, oh, all clones.
But, you are programmed to look perfect. We all know that's not real, but you really are programmed in this industry to be perfect, and it's not real. So that could really do a job on your subconscious and how you look at life and how you look at yourself. So throughout the years, everything was going great. Let's just say, for context of my journey, I was very, very lucky for the longest time. And then the WWE hired me, and it didn't go according to plan, meaning my contract did not get renewed. At the time, for my contract not to get renewed was very challenging because I always heard yeses, or I always learned that if you work harder than anybody else, you will be able to achieve what you wanted. I worked my butt off, and I wasn't the right fit, and they still didn't like me. And I will get to the clickbaity at the moment. So when context. When I tell my story and we talk about how I was able to pivot, launch my agency, when I really realized that fame and money were not everything, because at the time I was getting a lot of notoriety, not in the way that I wanted. I was miserable, and this is what I was working for my whole entire life in the context of being a sports journalist, and I was miserable. Right. So what I find interesting right now, context for the clickbaity aspect of the podcast that asked me about my journey about the WWE, honesty is scary because you don't know how you're going to be perceived. There is a podcast that I was on, and I still think the conversation was amazing, but the way they started to market it, it felt a little cringy.
Not amazing.
It wasn't amazing, but you know what? I decided to just chalk it up for that's what it is, and just move on, keep it moving, and I just realized that when you put yourself out there in a very vulnerable state and you really don't have things outlined from the very beginning, this is how I want the copy to be, or this is how I want things perceived, maybe that's how they perceived my conversation, because the title was the WWE was the worst experience of my life. I mean, it sounded incredibly dramatic, right?
The text was in red and bold, and just it's ruined me. It's like chill. My trauma is not
relaxed.
My trauma's not your advertisement. Right.
But it was interesting because then I realized I was incredibly vulnerable, and you know what? we got a lot of clicks and I got a lot of great feedback. But I felt like, oh my gosh, when you put yourself out there, things are not going to be executed or delivered the way you would want, and it's still very scary. It's not going to deter me from continuing to speak my truth, which is terrifying in my world, because remember, for me, I've been programmed to, my output's been programmed to just be what people want to hear, right? Because this is the type of world that I'm a part of. This is the contracts. This is what you're just hired to say. But I am in a process right now where I keep on asking myself, what does honesty look like? And it's terrifying, to tell you the truth. It's honestly terrifying. And people get canceled for no reason nowadays. And that was another thing. I'm like, oh, how many times have something inappropriate come out of our mouths without the intention of hurting people? And that's one of the reasons I shied away from launching my own podcast or being incredibly raw and honest with my approach to media.
But the truth shall set you free.
The truth, yes, will set you free. Maybe you'll cry along the way. No, I think it's a freeing space to be in, and I think that's where I am right now. I mean, I want to be able to empower people to build their brands and their authenticity and build off of that. That's what the WWE taught me, right? Just because it was the first time that I felt like a failure. It's the first time that I really went through a horrible experience personally, because my personal life was falling into.
Didn't compliment.
It was bad, right? But for me, it was my pivot into finding myself. And at the time, although we're being ripped apart, it's actually we're being brought to life.
Yeah, setback is just a setup for a comeback.
Yes.
Now, her story, his story, I like to say it's his story, and those that don't know their history are doomed to repeat it, which is the value behind biographies, learning from the mistakes of others. And they had a clickbait title, and I'm very curious because now, authenticity is everything. For the first time in history, we can actually, without any followers, just because of the way the algorithms in the For You page, thanks to TikTok, I would say they changed the way that these platforms really display content. You don't need followers to reach followers, right?
It's crazy.
And curious, if we do reach the masses, what do you believe, and we haven't even filmed this entire interview or conversation yet, what do you believe the title of this podcast would be?
Just jump.
Just jump. Please elaborate.
It's so interesting because looking back at my life, and it's so, I don't want to be so intense.
I was so quick. I'm just, you're like, just jump. I'm like, whoa, okay.
Well, you know what? Because
good question.
No, but I was, because for me right now, it's the theme of my personal life, right? And when I speak to my clients and when I speak to friends, I'm in a place of trying to be fearless. And what does that mean? I'm saying that in a place because I am the biggest scaredy cat on earth, right? Like, and it's interesting for me to say, like, I've been plagued by fear my whole entire life, and it's interesting just because that's played out in a lot of decisions that I've made, the decisions that I have not made. And being this person that I am right now, I just came back from Colombia and I was on vacation. I really wanted to get real about what I wanted to accomplish in 2025. And I didn't want it to be like, new year, new me. I really wanted to not be so afraid, right? And a lot of that comes from trying to be perfect for my parents, right? And like really doing a lot of introspection. I had an amazing experience in Colombia with my family that I just realized that I had. And I think that played a huge point in my identity as to who I thought I was and who I want to continue to be, and I want to continue to make myself proud. And also there's opportunities coming to me that maybe before I would have said no or would have given it to someone. But what do you do when you get an opportunity? You say yes or no. And I want to say yes to accomplishing my dreams and helping people. But it's very ballsy because now if you are in front of a lot of people, you're going to need to have whether they're answers or give them the resources. It's risky. But I want to say yes versus no and just jump. I think that's personally my theme.
Take the lead.
Take the leap.
And so I was having a conversation, and you really came to mind with this, and it was with my current partners, and my partners are just so great, and I love them. I wouldn't trade them for the world. It's like we go through the ringer. The great times are great. The bad times, we all feel that together. And we met through our previous business partners who I say you need to find bad partners in order to find good partners.
100%.
And we found each other through that. And I thought that was amazing. And we always try to figure out ways to collab because we're just always
We always gravitated to each other,
right?
you know?
And, you know, I see you and you see me and we're like, wow, such skillful. They compliment. How can we, and, you know,
How can we support one another? How can I root you on?
Of course. And I'm curious, in your ventures, and how do you find right partners that do the fit, especially with how much stuff you got going on? What are your ways of approaching that? And, you know, if you could share some light.
Having business partners throughout my career has always been a thing, right?
Of course,
and I think a lot of time it was interesting because I think at the time it made sense because I was able to collaborate with a very talented business partner that was in the world of business. At the time, we were in the right timeline as to our strengths and what we wanted to accomplish. I think we need a lot of contrast to understand what is working and what is not working. And I think when my past business partner and I realized we weren't meant to continue together, it was just because from a lot of people have morals and ethics that don't jive, and that is okay. But I think at the time where I wanted to go with, from a spiritual perspective, from a mental perspective, how do I feel around this person, right? It just, things were not clicking anymore, and I think it was time to let go. And it felt like a divorce, obviously, just because business partners
It's a marriage.
It is a marriage. I also think at the time, and I want to go back to the fear, sometimes we feel a lot more comfortable when we have somebody next to us, when we say yes, when we enter rooms. And I also think I felt that I wouldn't be taken seriously at that time if I wasn't next to somebody as powerful. I mean, we were two women in the industry. Thank goodness that's a couple years ago. I mean, I feel now.
I feel like you might get more of an advantage of being a female founder.
You know, yes and no. I think it's the good and the bad. But I think the safety blanket of the moment where I wanted to have a partner next to me, I think I want to be able to feel different now. And I do. I'm able to go by myself and I know what I stand on, right?
Mm-hmm.
But saying that, meaning it's very honest. And a lot of times we say yes with people because it feels like a safety blanket. I've done enough where I don't need a safety blanket, right? But I think, you know, a lot of times before I would think that I would need to accomplish so much in order to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
And I have, and which is kind of crazy because it doesn't seem normal, but I was always trying to compensate, grow my resume even longer because I always wanted to prove that I was adequate for the job or I was the right person to hire.
I was good enough.
I was good enough, but there you go.
It's like Inside Out too. It just keeps programming.
Oh, I love that movie, Inside Out. But for me, it was like I always needed to prove that I was good enough. But what did that mean? That meant doing more internships. That meant doing things for free to put more, you know.
Build a portfolio.
Of course, but a little bit too much.
Yeah.
Right? There's a point where you could say, okay, relax. Mm-hmm. You know what you're doing.
Which is interesting because when I was going through my extreme, you know, I'm somewhat of an extremist, and then I find a balance, and then I revert back. Right? And one of the things was when I was going deep into these personal growth and self-development conferences, you know, you say fear a lot. And you know the acronym of fear?
No.
False events appear
Okay, I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, of course. And, you know, maybe I wasn't saying it to you, but I was saying it to whoever is watching.
No, but I love that. And it's funny because I don't really talk about fear a lot. I want to be very honest, right? And nobody walks around with like, this is what I'm afraid of. I think I want to be able to just tackle all of those things that are not real, right?
Yeah. It's all illusions, smoke and mirrors. Mm-hmm. Now, another thing I learned, and this was at a very interesting conference where we created this destiny board, where it was like a vision board on steroids. You put all your toward values, all the things you want to do, like happiness, adventure, and then you put your away values, which are like grief, loneliness, fear, and then you create rules for each one. So for happy, I could feel happy every time I smile. So the rules for positive values are super easy to attain, right?
Yeah.
I want to be happy, smile. I want adventure, do something new. This is something new, right? And then the negative values is you create very difficult rules. So like loneliness is anytime I create a false illusion that there's no one on this planet that will speak to me. So it's like there's somebody, go call Domino's, you'll talk to somebody, and then in order to feel lonely, you need to create a false illusion, right? So you create these rules to abide by. And this was back in 2016. I have not changed it. Your vision board changes every year. This board I haven't changed. But one thing, you know, and during the conference, you had this partner. And this partner was called your destiny buddy, because you're formulating your destiny. And he saw me creating my toward values, and he saw me put success on that. And he said just one of the most profound things that to this day I still refer to it as I am in this conversation with you. And he goes, "Oh, I see you put success." I took that off. And I'm like, "Why?" And he goes, "Because I felt like if I had that on my board, I'd always try to become successful. And if you ask anyone around me, they all would think I'm super successful."
Yeah.
Going back to you building your portfolio, it's like the second I took success off of my board was the day that I truly became it. And at what point do you become ready for the position, right? At what point is your portfolio good enough to land that gig and that job? Right?
Yeah, and I love that you even brought that up, because trying to understand why I would keep doing that to myself, and I think we all do that, right? We do the destination happiness. When I get here, I'll be happy. When I accomplish this, I'll get happy.
It's the journey.
But a lot of the times we're never happy because we're always moving the goalpost.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, looking back, I'm like, Andrea, you literally have done everything and anything, but in your mind, you're
not good enough.
You're not good enough, and I kept on moving the goalposts,
yeah.
and then you're stuck in this perpetual cycle of unhappiness, and it's caused by yourself. And the quicker we're able to realize that, is we're able to just really just be happy, right? And just be at peace where you're at, and that's why I'm really really focused in this industry to help people understand what that looks like. Because the zone of creation is amazing, but how do we make a living out of it, right? It's these two things that sometimes feel completely polar opposite of one another. You want to create, but you don't get a job to put money on the table, right? And I think with all my friends that are in this industry that struggle within that, I'm always trying to help them, and they help me in turn. It's like, how do we stay happy or at peace, even if that thing that we identify as success is not here? So I've been trying to really understand what peace looks like, even if that thing didn't appear to me the way I wanted. Yeah. Peace is the most important thing that I try to strive for.
Amen. Yeah, they say success without fulfillment's the ultimate failure. And I'm completely with you. It's just, especially with AI, the rise of AI, people are so concerned with it, but I truly believe it's going to remove us away from labor jobs and allow us to do what our God-given gift is to create.
That's what
creators.
I'm hoping for. I'm very much an optimist, and I just did my TED Talk on You Are the Story and taking your fear away from AI. So I want to be able to hire AI to wash my clothes.
Of course. And with Optimus, Tesla bots are coming, No more making your bed or cooking your food.
I know, that's what I hope they can do.
So there was one thing that you tapped on, which I want to move into this direction. And you talked about, was this when we were talking about the partnerships, the spiritual side?
Yeah.
And, you and I, we jive off that. And you're the first person to ever tell me, when I was kind of figuring out my voice or who I really was in this world as I portray myself, at least. And he said, you're a conscious leader. And I couldn't figure out what exactly that was until, one day I tell people it happens super slow, and then it happens all at once. And it just clicked. And how does one bring, I guess, spirituality and business? This is a conversation, especially, people that are watching this is the entrepreneurship community of Furlough, which is 35,000 members at the time of this recording.
What's up, community?
What's up, guys? And, they're I want to sit here and talk about consciousness and spirituality. And a lot of them want to talk about growth hacking and go to market and lead generation and scaling and customer acquisitions. And it's just like, I try to express, because if you go down the path of that rat race of what this matrix is ultimately puts you to just work, you're working for a magical piece of paper that gets devalued over time by the people that printed it, right? And how does spirituality really come into place in business and collaborations?
Well, I love that question, because I think you cannot have one without the other. And I've always been a very spiritual person, and throughout my journey, my human journey, I realized that I needed to heal a lot of stuff, like my early 20s, mid 20s. The whole point is, like, I went through a divorce, I went through a lot of things personally where when you start to question who you are, why you're here on earth, just like really deep things, and my spirituality was the reason I was able to get out of it in a healthy way. But that journey, and I mean, this journey is not linear, right? Sometimes you're on the up, the next side you are crying in bed, right? I understood that I needed to heal a lot of my stuff, just because during my journey as an entrepreneur, my emotions would get in the way. And when I say emotions, a lot of hurt, like I was crying over the dumbest things. But the thing is, because I had a lot of stuff that I hadn't faced honestly. And I realized that I really needed to heal a lot of parts of myself. And it was really tough, because what does healing look like? You know, and I think spirituality is a belief outside of you, something that's you not necessarily tied to religion, but something outside of yourself. You know, we can call it creator or whatnot. I really needed to figure out how to heal some parts of myself. And just to give it context, when I started to heal a lot of parts of myself, I started to succeed in business. Yeah. And there was an aha moment when I was like, oh my gosh, all this pain and all this work that I was doing on myself. I was going to, you know, whether it's a therapist, and then I was going to a spiritual teacher, and I was feeling my feelings that I was like putting away, suppressing them, right? And I was getting sick and not understanding why I was getting sick. It's because all of that emotion was being stored, and it started to come out in ways. Your body is brilliant. And I really understood that I needed to face my shadow self. And at the time, I was like, what's a shadow self, right? Like all this weirdness. But I got to a point of severe depression where I was questioning my life. I was questioning if I wanted to even continue. And I knew that I needed to get myself out of it, or else it would be a very horrible outcome. Yeah. And it took me a very, very, very long time. And you know what? I am an expert at showing people perfection.
Yeah, coaches don't play.
No.
It's like, I'll teach you how to be perfect. What about yourself?
But I mean, as a TV personality, you would never know that I was dying inside, and I was dying little by little, right? And I was, you know, the more pain, the bigger the smile would be. Remember, fake lashes, big hair, you would not know how unhappy I was. So I was in a path of trying to discover myself, and all this happened around the time where my last year with the Florida Panthers, and I give it context because people who have followed my career, like, remember, they've seen the smiles, they haven't heard the story, right? And I'm a very, very, very private person. So I was going through severe depression, and to really ground where I wanted to go and become a successful version of myself and a healthy version of myself, I really needed to lean onto my spirituality more than ever. And I had to break through some really bad things in my brain in order to finally come out on the other side. It was a very, very messy process, but it was interesting because without going through that, I wouldn't have been successful in business. When you're able to clear your stuff, you're able to have clarity. And I was able to get crystallization with all the ideas and how I wanted to move forward. You know, so when you start mending your broken heart, amazing things happen, but you have to go in. And when you go in, it's terrifying. And who do you talk to? You can't talk to a lot of people about your broken heart, right? And as we get older, it breaks, you put it back together. It breaks, you put it back together. And then the older I've gotten, the more I've understood that I need to take care of myself from a spiritual perspective, and in order to take care of my business perspective. So I honestly think you can't have one without the other. I think we all have a belief in something bigger, even if you say you're an atheist or whatnot. You know, I think we've
all been there.
We've all, you know, yeah, of course, you know. And the spiritual side, I think, is something beautiful. And I think now, finally, we're having these open conversations that before were deemed inappropriate, taboo. You know, I love speaking about spirituality with my community, with my people, just because it's the resilience that I find in my spirituality as to how I can still continue and be joyful when sometimes this world does not seem to have any reason to be joyful at all. You know?
It's so interesting because as you say this, like I relate to a lot of it. You know,
I mean, I hope I made sense, because it sounds like when I speak about it, and I don't really, this is the first time I've ever spoken about it. Maybe it landed like a smorgasbord.
An exclusive. No,
I hope it made sense, but okay.
And,
it's just.
And I'm going to go a little deeper because they say that the longest journey is 14 inches from the brain to the heart, which is going within, which I was talking about it with somebody. It's like in, you know, in an ever expanding universe, everything goes outwards and it's ever expanding. So technically it's infinite that way, infinite this way. So if it's infinite both ways, you are the center of the universe. How important are you to be the center of the universe? And people have, you know, to say spirituality, to speak mental health, to speak entrepreneurship, like it's, you know, eventually you speak about all three.
You have to.
It's
They're
a
all
story.
related. They're all related. You know, sales funnels and spirituality. Who knew?
I know, right? You got to be conscious in your messaging.
Yeah. And I love that you brought it back to conscious leader, just because there's so many people out there that want to be leaders, but if you are going to lead, it's a huge responsibility, right? And if I'm following somebody, I really want their actions to be so intentional with why they're doing what they're doing. And it's really hard to connect each dot from A to Z and understand your intention from A to Z. And if you scratch your belly, or if you know, scratch your head, what is your intention behind every single action? Because sometimes we're on autopilot or in survival mode.
It's the paradigms that just programming. People are just constantly doing it.
And we're not
your habits. Your habits are like, you think that these are your choices, but you've just been in this perpetual cycle. And some people's habits are to be scrolling. Right?
Yes.
And they're just programmed in that way. So it's just breaking the habit of really being yourself.
And being conscious of it as to the why, I think is incredibly important. And I think now in my life, I want to be surrounded by conscious leaders, because I don't have all the answers to anything. And I'm also looking for guidance in so many things. And I want the person that I'm asking for advice or help to really be aware, self-aware, emotionally aware, spiritually aware. Yeah, teach me how to make $1 million, but tell me that you're spiritual as well. I don't want one without the other. And we have different leaders for everybody, but I think the spirituality is such a strong component to being a leader.
Yeah. And I think it's a path for everyone. It's your divine birthright. You know, it's only a matter of time.
It's only a matter of time.
The secret to the matrix, it's the red pill and the blue pill. The real secret is there is no blue pill. We all take the red pill because we all wake up and see what's happening in the society that we live in, and understand that it's not PvP. It's really like all of us can live harmoniously. And living in Miami, especially, you know, for those that don't, business collaborations feel like someone, in order for someone to win, someone needs to lose.
Yes.
And it's unfortunate because a lot of my business collaborations all happen online. So I don't really necessarily deal with a lot of Miami people in my business negotiations, and they seem to be quite fruitful. Everyone seems to be happy and winning, and our churn rate, in the sense of how many people leave us, it's way below industry average. And it's funny because now, actually the other day I went to dinner with a friend of mine, and it was the same day that we had the coffee, that dinner.
After.
And he said,
I was like, fit me in your schedule now.
And he's like, yeah, I told you the rules that he made, where he's like, I make rules of people I work with, which is, 1, I only work with people that are people of God. 2, I don't work with overweight people, because if you can't take care of your body, you can't take care of the business. 3, I don't work with people that cheat, because if you cheat on someone you sleep with, you're going to definitely cheat on me.
100%. I told my friend that the other day.
Right? And the 4th thing, which had me smiling, was I don't work with people from Miami. Which,
you're like Mr. Miami.
I'm like, well, he's like, I think I'm going to break my 4th rule. And ever since that, I was just like, it's great to see someone have a moral compass and understanding that if there is some sort of God or spirituality element to them, these are people you want to work with, because they don't believe in an I against the world, more we are on the same team and we could all win. And even recently, we've kind of had a shred of clients that if we, I was speaking to one of my partners. She was telling me like, oh, we do so right by them. They could go work with somebody else. And they're going to see how dark and bad it really is versus what it is to work with us. I'm like, notice all the people that stayed. Those are all the ones you wanted to stay, right?
Of course.
And sometimes these problems solve themselves, and you might look at it as chaos or frustration or even a punishment, but there is a bigger plan at place. And I think
sometimes I have to remind myself of that. Like, obviously, like right now, I'm trying to be a conscious leader, right? But I don't have it all figured out. There's times where I forget everything that you just said, right? And I think it is the journey of reminding yourself, right? Really getting in and out of that, get away from survival mode, getting away from the matrix, as we call it. But we're human. And I think for me, I've always had to there's so much guilt because I'm trying to obviously remember it's that programming. There's like I always go in and it's like the cha-cha slide. It is all the time for me.
Real smooth.
No, it is, and it kind of and it's exhausting sometimes, right? To be the conscious leader and obviously try to stay in my spiritual path and at the same time honor myself as the creative and make a living and want to be a leader in my community. That is very hard to do all at once.
Yeah, it's keeping your peace while
Yes.
everything around you is meant kind of to disturb it. How do you maintain that higher frequency, that higher vibration that says like, I am positive spirits? Because the reality is when you're down and you're broke, no one wants to work with a broke person. So if you're in that scarcity mindset and you're trying to get clients, they're not going to come.
100%.
But if you're winning, your portfolio's killing it, everyone's making money, people are going to flock to you. And it's like, yeah, when you're down, no one really wants you. When you're up, everybody wants to be with you and wants to work with you. And keeping that headspace, right? Keeping dialed in and
keeping the faith, staying in a place where you can take care of yourself, still being joyful and cheerful.
Yeah.
So it's so interesting because I'm working with an amazing entrepreneur. His name is Nick Sarnicola, and big shout out to Nick. Yeah, founder of Shopley, amazing. I'm helping him with his e-courses to produce it. He's launching an e-course called Art of Desire. Art of Desire, and it's his journey as to how he became incredibly successful. And it was just interesting because although I was just producing his Art of Desire, I was taking the course at the same time, obviously, because I'm putting it together. And one thing that he brought up, and something that I'm really trying to implement into everything I'm doing, he keeps on speaking about safeguards. Like, what are the things that we are doing in order to help us stay in flow state, right? Stay happy. What do you do on a day-to-day basis? How do you protect your mind? How do you protect your spirit in order to stay in that space? And for me, I was like, what? This is amazing, because I didn't have safeguards, right? Meaning like,
can you give an example? Yeah.
Of course, whether it's an alarm, at 5 o'clock to just make sure you're not scrolling, right? Oh, yes. What can you do? Reminders around your house, right? Whether it's you're amazing, you're great, you're beautiful. What are your bad habits, for example? Name your bad habits and what is the complete contrast of where you want to be, and what can you put into place in order to help you get there? I mean, we're bombarded with advertising 24/7 and everything is competing for our attention, right? Yeah. How can we protect our mind to be able to stay in our happy place, right? For me, I try to stay away from the news. It's very hard, right? But at the same time, I'm a journalist, duh. It's virtually impossible.
We are the news.
We are the news. But, how do I protect my peace? And I'm a very empathetic person, and I'm an empath, which sometimes it feels it's not a superpower, right? It really hurts my heart.
Your greatest strength can be your biggest burden.
It's the worst. I mean, and I think my human experience has to figure out my superpower and how do I use it as a superpower. Yeah. But going back to how do we protect our mind, we need to create safeguards. Yeah. And a lot of people don't. And I think creating safeguards allows you to not be in autopilot mode.
Yeah. And what safeguards have you implemented?
Alarms on my phone. Like get me out. I mean, like at 5 o'clock, it tells me make sure you're not on the phone. Yeah. Like it's very simple, but I found myself in the afternoon starting to scroll aimlessly.
Yeah.
Right.
Right when you finish the clock and you're like kind of figuring out what to do next for the day.
Yeah, I need reminders to get me out of things. In the morning, my alarm, it says, listen to your devotional.
Nice. Because
sometimes we just get into like, we got to work, we got to make money,
I feel like my safeguard is my Google Calendar. Just like, I create the perfect day every day.
Well, you're really good at all that stuff. But talk to me about that. How do you, that's a safeguard. That's your implementation.
Oh, no, it's the meditations in there, the call people. I make sure if someone comes to mind, like in a form of a download, I'm like, I need to reconnect with this person, be in touch with them. I'll throw it on my calendar. I'll put 30 minutes. If I call them, they don't answer, I'll move them over to another day just to follow up and keep things. And, recurring, whether like my mornings or my sanctuary, like my peace. How you start the day is how you conquer the day.
Oh, that's very true.
Yeah, so I'll make sure the meditation, the workouts, the first meal, the being outside, the touching grass. A lot of people, especially in this remote life where you don't have an office or you're not commuting, you stay indoors all day. and your feet haven't touched the earth. And it's like, I tell people, I'm like, cement's a psyop. The sidewalk is a psyop. Like, you need to be on the earth, because there's science that backs this, of like the electrons that flow and it stores. And
I mean, they sell grounding mats?
I have those too. Yeah.
Do they work?
I mean, I feel great. I
Okay,
sleep
good.
great. You know, sometimes getting out of bed's the hard part, because it's just so good. It's so good. But it's very interesting. So you're talking about these safeguards, and actually the other day I was with somebody. He has a safeguard where he bought I don't know, it's a product. It's a brick that the brick is the only way that he can unlock social media devices from his phone.
Oh, I love that.
So the only way he can be on social media is if he's like in his kitchen, which I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, because now you're definitely not scrolling in bed, right? Before, you know, with the blue lights in your eyes. And very interesting you said that, and it's a cool product. I have no affiliation. I don't know.
That's amazing. But hey, if you want to sponsor us, hey.
Yeah. So interesting, because you say the safeguards, and it reminded me of something called shadow work, which, as I say shadow work, I know you know what shadow work is, but that was my response to it. This person started speaking, and I just wanted to bring it up to you, because I feel like you're going to like this, and it relates with you so well. And the shadow work was really, what were you doing in the shadows that you didn't necessarily think like you were good enough for, in the sense of, you know, I help startup founders because I can't be a startup founder. Or in my case, like, I was helping influencers because I wasn't an influencer myself. And you, who have been in so many productions, and it's like you and I are on the same path now, where it's like, okay, time to be in front of the camera instead of behind the camera, even though you've been obviously.
Yeah, but now it's time for me to be a conscious leader, right? And just be incredibly honest and really help people with my honesty versus the script, right? Because I was telling you before,
teleprompters.
It was always teleprompters, right? It was always very perfectly curated. There's a certain outcome that we want, so I was going like a little robot. But now it's time to just be me, and it's terrifying.
But there's the authenticity layer that comes to that
yes.
It just adds so much more of a real connection.
Well, we need it more than ever now, because remember, now AI is taking over the world.
Yeah.
Now I think human connection and the realness of who we are as humans, that's really what is going to make you different, right? Your honesty. And honesty is not a crazy confession. Honesty is just you. Yeah. And I really believe going back to square one, right? What makes you you, what makes you unique is the most important thing, and I think is going to be extinct later on if we don't allow it, just because we are programmed, right? There's AI, so I want to go back to the basics.
Of course.
It's you. And that's why I'm launching my podcast, You Are the Story.
Love that. It's interesting. I had a conversation with a friend the other day, and they told me that, oh, it's so cool that you have a brand, you know, and I thought they were talking about furlough, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. And they're like, yeah, how do you build your personal brand? I'm like, what? No. Oh, you mean me? Like, he's like, yeah, Joe has to know, but like your brand. And I go, brother, you have a brand. It's like, no, I don't. And I go, what people say when you leave the room, that's your brand, your reputation. What do people speak about you? And then I started asking, like, what do people say about you when they leave the room? And just seeing the wheels turn. And understanding,
it's like aha moment.
Wow, yeah, just like, wow, it's as simple as, in order to build a brand, I have to be me, but who am I to everyone else? Because you think you are your intentions and your beliefs, but the world perceives you as your actions and behaviors. And sometimes your intentions and beliefs don't really align with the actions and the behaviors. And I do believe everyone deep down, you know, they have good intentions, but how it's reflected in the outer world doesn't necessarily match.
Well, that's where the conscious leader comes in. Like, how does everything align? And it's not easy to get there, right? How does what is aligning with what you're saying is aligning with how you're being perceived and your actual intention? A lot of times it doesn't, because we're not conditioned to think that way, right? You always think somebody has an angle, and as a salesperson, it's a lot.
The tactics.
But being a conscious leader, in my opinion, is that. And I love that you brought up shadow work, right? And I want us to talk about that, because
the one that you and I actually know. Let's do it.
I mean, for me, in the simplest terms, I think as a whole, as a human, we're made up of light and dark. You cannot have one without the other. You know, when we're happy, we're also sad. And it's a pendulum that swings left to right. And we are conditioned in this world to not show when we're sad, to not really talk about our traumas or what really got us there.
Which is honestly great conversation. Anytime someone talks about their traumas with me, it's like, we walk away at the end, hug, like we connected. Like it's so deep. And like when I was dealing with the depression, I didn't mention this part. I was trying to tell my friends.
I didn't know that about you, Joe, by the way. Your story, talking like your e-course, your amazing e-course, your entire story. I mean, I knew bits and pieces of your story, right? And there was just a lot of intuition from my end, like you're my people, but I didn't know your story from a linear perspective. So the fact that you took us from here to here, and I shared it with Sebastian, I'm like, you have to listen to Joe's story. But it was interesting because it was a very honest perspective, right? And I mean, we don't need to walk around and talk about our traumas and our situations, right?
But it's what makes you you.
Yes.
It's the brick that laid the foundation.
And it's hard to talk about those things.
It is until it isn't. Mm-hmm. And there's power. Obviously, when it's, let's say you were raised being abused, if it's a struggle for you to speak about it, you haven't dealt with it. And it's so amazing when I talk about, my traumas, and people are like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry you went through that." I'm like,
I'm good.
I'm good now.
No,
I'm just telling you because it leads to the story, and I can speak about it so freely. And you can put me on an EEG, check my heart rate, and nothing's going to change because I'm still in my peace. Mm-hmm. And that I truly believe is the shadow work we're going to talk about, right?
But yeah, your story was incredible because you were able to share it and just really share that piece. But for me, dealing with my shadow work, that's when like the magic happened. It was not pretty, right? And I also say to people, it's a never-ending journey. Just because I dealt with my shadow work does not mean it's over, right? It's like it's like a video game. Now the next level, what does that look like, right? And you keep on.
You think that was the final boss?
Oh my gosh!
More trauma.
This is what you're dealing with now, but I think for us, in order to feel whole, we also need to address what made us so sad. And really ask those questions. And a lot of people don't have the space, cannot hold the space for your emotions. So I think that's the biggest thing. Like when you find genuine connection and somebody can hold space for you, it's something very special. And the people that are around me now, we hold space for each other. Not all the time, right? But we hold space for our problems. We hold space for our traumas. We hold space for it all.
Yeah. I'll tell you, it's interesting because I believe life is like a staircase that you go up where you realize you don't know. And then you don't know. I'm sorry. You don't know. Or you're like, I don't know of this thing. Like you didn't gain the awareness. It comes into your awareness. Now you don't know. And then you're like, oh, I'm going to learn it. And then you know that you know it, but you have to be conscious of it. And then you can do it completely unconsciously. And you reach this level that you think it's at the top of the staircase. I've reached here, and you're like, oh my God, there's a whole new set of staircases.
I really don't know anything.
Yeah, the more you know, the more you realize you know nothing.
Yes.
And it's so interesting because I'm sure you're in the space that you've seen a lot of people, the self-proclaimed experts.
Yes.
Which is something I refuse to call myself.
Yeah, I've always felt uncomfortable saying that. I always say I have my zone of genius. Yeah. But that zone of genius is always growing, and I'm never the smartest person in the room.
If you are, you're in the wrong room.
Exactly.
In this case, you're clearly the smartest person in this room. I'm in the right room.
We need to get into some other room. But yeah, I think saying you're an expert, but understanding what context. Context is absolutely everything. What I say, I'm in my zone of genius, but I cannot wait to keep on learning. And I'm also at an age where I'm okay saying that I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because before I was like, oh my God, I can't let this person know that I have no idea what they're saying.
I think it's a strength. And when someone asks me something, I'm like, look, I have no idea, but I'm pretty confident I can figure it out. Mm-hmm. Especially with obviously the tools out there, especially with AI. I got a personalized tutor that's.
But I also think like being a leader, you need to really understand what you know and what you don't know, and really be quick to ask for help, right? Mm-hmm. If I'm going to lead people, if I'm going to help people, if I'm going to help grow brands and my employees, you need to be the first one to understand what you don't know.
Yeah, I think it was Henry Ford, and if I butcher this story, I apologize, but Henry Ford obviously invented the Ford vehicle, yes. and they were trying to discredit him in court, and they were bringing lawyers up, talking, they were asking him questions like, what is the fifth element of the periodic table of contents? What is the distance to the moon and the sun? And he's just there like, I don't know. Saying I don't know to all these things. And then the lawyer goes, that proves it. he's incompetent. He's just trying to discredit his genius. And his final rant was like, why do I need to know any of this? I am one of the wealthiest people in the world. I press a button and an expert in that field comes and answers it, which is, going back to what you're saying, you might not know, but surround yourself with people that I truly believe complement your skills. And I'm a big Marvel fan. I like to reference the Avengers. You have different types of heroes that complement each other. And, it's like a band of unusual suspects that create world-saving, multiverse-saving skills. And I feel like you and I formed somewhat of an Avengers.
It's a little Avengers team,
Yeah.
and we have yet to accomplish a lot more good stuff.
You have to save the world.
I'm ready.
Oh, we're on the path.
Yeah.
It's coming. It's coming. Beautiful stuff. What is the last breakthrough that you've had?
The last breakthrough, I think it was when I was in Colombia.
With the fam?
With my family.
Yeah.
My breakthrough.
That was a good one, actually, now that you mention it.
Yeah.
I kind of had a similar one with when you're trying to figure out the identity, and you had, to give quick context, you had the second last name that you just went by the first because like Americanized, and then when you have it, you're like, something that I felt like I've been not necessarily running from. It's who you are.
Yeah, it was just so interesting, and this was just very personal to me. I mean, originally I'm from Colombia, hablo español, soy de Armenia, Colombia, but coming to this country, remember, we're talking about programming and how to be accepted, and remember, I wanted to be a Barbara Walters. So from a very early age, I knew I could not have an accent if I wanted to do national news. I knew the type of template that I needed to become to get that position, that coveted, and this was a very young age. And I thank goodness that my family really spoke Spanish in the house, very still Colombian, very Hispanic, but there was an essence of my culture that I was losing. I mean, I love living in the United States, but I knew that I had to condition myself to be this person to become successful, right? And this last journey to Colombia was very important to me because I got reunited with an aspect of my family that I had never had a connection, and I shared their last name, Gallo. But it's just very profound because being in my motherland, I felt a belonging, and I understood there was an aspect of myself that I was not embracing, and there was an identity piece that was able to finally come home. I was able to come home to myself. And when I say come home to myself, I felt more whole. And I'm an only child. It's always been my mother and my father. So very independent and very alone. And I don't use the word alone as like, oh, alone, but like it was just only us three. But understanding that I had this other side of the family that I had no connection to, but now not only do I have a connection, but it's an emotional connection. It's something that I can't really put into words. There was a piece of my identity that I was able to integrate back to who I was as a person. And I can't wait to explore what does that really mean, right? I can't wait to really figure out what that journey looks like. And it was just it was spiritual, it was emotional, it was all the things. And it inspired me to continue to embrace my roots. I do all my TV production in English. I can't wait to do it in Spanish, embrace my language, hablar en español y seguir practicando.
Amazing. And it's funny because when you said this story with me, I was like, look at you and your community, which is family is a community. And we started this conversation kind of briefly mentioning that levels of consciousness of being guilt-based obedience to a higher
but I
authority.
love your hierarchy of that specific because
It's a model.
The model. I love it because I think it's easy to understand, even if you're not into the world of spirituality. I think it's very palpable. I think it's easy to understand.
And quite relatable since everybody goes through this.
Yes, and I think it's an easy model to integrate into your life, even if this is something you're not interested, because I also think it will allow you to go a little bit deeper into your journey. If you don't know where to start, I think step one, this is where you start.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's just becoming aware of it. And it's interesting because, we're not going to go so deep into this.
That's the next episode.
If you want, come reach out. But every level, they have transitional factors that trigger, and they ultimately lead to a dissonance, which people think especially when they leave a job.
Oh.
They think that dissonance, like, oh my God, I can't be here. I'm gonna get fired. All this. It's like, that's good, a dissonance, because it's kind of like you breaking free of this. And even it applies to societies, where societies, like you see the dissonance in the kind of like the civil war that's happening in London in a sense, right? There's a dissonance, and that will lead to a conscious evolution of all the people that are a part of it. And you, who have moved from, I would say, corporate world of guilt-based obedience that moves into success, took in your own consulting, and now with the pod that you're launching, let's be honest, the pod is a great way to build community. And you, who have been a part of lots of productions, are coming with a new angle. If you can share a little bit about that and how that ties into community building.
I love how you described it, because I didn't know I was building community. I just knew I was helping people, and I was growing.
You're unconsciously doing it.
I was unconsciously doing, but
Yeah.
that's the thing. The fact that I now I'm going to be conscious about it, it's even cooler, right? Being incredibly intentional with time, energy, intentional. That's another word that's
Key. That was, yeah, because if you're unconscious doing it, you're kind of going with
You're
it.
going
But
with
if you're
the-
conscious, intentional, then you can really amplify
yes,
what your intention is.
100% being incredibly intentional. My fiance Sebastian, he loves to host people for polo, and I just bring this up because he loves to be of service to others, which is beautiful. He loves it. And when we started hosting polo, for example, people would come to our tent. It sounds so simple, right? But we were able to create amazing connections, not just for business, but helping one another. We were building community in a very intentional way, because now that people were strangers a year ago, now they're best friends because they met at our tent, right? And then it started to roll over into my personal life, because now with the projects that I'm a part of, it's a web of people that they all kind of know each other, and it's just it's like a beehive mentality, right? Everybody's moving in a way that everyone's helping one another. I mean, just like us, for example, if you're doing something, anything I can support you, I want to cheer you on, I want to help you, and vice versa. And the people that we have attracted, it's the same thing. Like, we're in each other's corner. We need you. They're there, and we're there for them. And everything that we're building, it has that ethos, and it's just really cool, because when you put these types of people together, only amazing things can happen. It gets amplified to the woof degree. And now that I am launching my podcast, You Are the Story, I really want that to be the conduit to continue at a very high level, because everybody has a podcast, but why not, right? I want the podcast that we're creating to be a conduit to help people, not just on the microphone, but the whole point is to create this podcast in a live setting where networking can happen. Like, how can we all help each other, amplify, and just inspire one another? And I want to be able to take it back to basics. And that's where we're at with the podcast. I'm doing the first episode at Fable Miami on Saturday with the collective here in Miami, is a mastermind group that I'm a part of. And it's going to be really exciting
With a live
because
audience.
It's a live audience. And that's
cool,
the thing,
'cause
like,
now you're
anything
giving
can
them a
happen.
reason. Yeah.
Anything can happen. And I really want the live audience to be a component of the podcast.
Absolutely. And it was interesting because I'm part of several communities in Miami.
Yes, you are.
And one of the communities I was a part of, it was the first meetup of the year, and they wanted to talk about, how did last year go? If you could summarize your biggest win, your biggest loss, your biggest lesson learned. And they spoke about this year, and the theme that they wanted to go with was legacy. And you do breakout groups into 3, and one of the people that was in the group, they started speaking, and I'm like, I knew I gravitated to you because you took all the words out of my mouth. And what I wanted to do was more events to bring people together, whether it's online or offline. And one of the things that we both agreed upon was that the I guess serendipity of an event is the fact that, like, if I am a very influential person, people are going to reach out to me in DMs and be like, hey, can you, like, try and take. But if I do an event, this is what I give to you. You just take from the event. You enjoy the experience. And most of the time, what they get is actually a connection to somebody. And knowing that you were the reason that 2 people met and did great things, and not doing that with expectations, right? Because I can't even tell you the amount of people that I see someone talking and I'm like, wow, I should introduce you to this person. I introduce them. They have a call. And then like 6 months later, a year later, I'm like, I see them at dinner or something. I'm like, wait, you guys, how do you guys know each other? They're like, you introduced. I'm like, oh my God, yeah, we're business partners
that's
now.
amazing.
I'm like, what? And it's just, I think that's some of the greatness that comes from community building, from bringing people together. And
you hit it on the head, and that's what we're experiencing, right? We want to be able to bring value to people off the jump, and we're surrounded by so many amazing humans, and it's the gift we give to our community. So you can't lose that way, right?
Absolutely. No, to give is to receive.
Yes.
You know, and there's no greater thing in life than to give service to others.
It's honestly, it's the best, because when you get into this take mentality, and obviously we're in a very materialistic society, I think we really tap into a different vibration when we're giving and being service to others.
Well, it's a scarcity versus abundance, you know?
Yes. And that can look like your time. That can even look like, opening your heart to somebody that just needs to hear.
Yep. Yeah, it's such a powerful thing to give. And I ask you, what will be your legacy?
That's a great question.
Is that loaded? I don't know. I feel like every time I ask you a great question, you're like, just jump. I'm like, what? I just said this.
No, I will. You know what?
Think about it. Give me a second.
No, give me a second. My legacy.
All right. Good question. Good questions don't have fast answers.
100%. I think because I want to be incredibly intentional with the answer, because I think we're all a work in progress, and I'm still very much a work in progress. And
Aren't we all?
It's just crazy.
It's the ones that aren't, that have the most work ahead of them.
I want to be able to help people find themselves. And that looks like through my work. My strength is to see people clearly and help them build their brand to find freedom in what they want to do. I want people to find the freedom and find the autonomy in their voice. And for me, I always feel like it was that, like breaking through, and I'm still trying to find that for me. But I want to be able to help people not only in that way, and I want to be able to create impact with a lot of people that may need it. You're gonna have to come back to me on that one, because I want to be very, very intentional with that look like maybe have a tactical plan about it. But because it's easy to say I want to help people, right? But what does helping people look like? I really want to help people with my gift to seeing people clearly. We want to be able to break free from the matrix, right? From the 9 to 5, from that programming. And when you are in the vibration of creation, there's so much joy in it. I mean, it's amazing, right? Like after our talks, we're like, woo, we can conquer the world, because we get into that flow state. We get into this creation state. And then you speak to somebody that doesn't get it. They're like, ugh.
This person's crazy.
Right? But when you're in that, only amazing things can happen. And we are in a society where building your brand can help you do that, right? And I've been able to find ways to do that for myself and find the belief in myself. So I want to be able to help people find the belief in themselves that they can do it as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I feel like legacy is just like a little nice bow to put on. Are there any other topics or things or value driven that you can possibly think that we can share? If not, I'm going to give you some closing questions.
I mean, we can speak forever, because there's like so many verticals to life. Your heart, your body, your mind, love.
Being a heart-centered leader.
Yeah.
People work with this too much. And if you worked with this, you'll find that you'll go further in life.
Yeah, I will touch on empathy. For me, trying to find, I look at it as a superpower, but I feel like I'm such a baby and really trying to figure out how empathy is really working for me, because for me, empathy, I'm so empathetic that it's debilitating, right? I still feel like a baby deer, and that's not very constructive nor productive. So for me, a question for you, how do you find empathy to be your superpower? And I always ask people this because I need help in finding my superpower in my empathy.
Yeah, it's funny because I actually gained that through my parents understanding that, like, they're all children. Like, we're all just children. Mm-hmm. We just have bigger bodies, and we've been around here a little bit longer. But like at look at the giant scheme of things, of how long things have been. Like, we're children and we're all just trying to figure things out. We're all genuinely doing our best that we possibly can. And like, I look how I feel inside and some of the things I do in my past, like, yeah, would I've done things differently? Did they get, you know, like, did I, what I do match what I wanted to be done? And imagine what they think about that. And sometimes people say things about me and I'm like, well, they're not wrong. I don't think they're right, but I don't think they're wrong either. And understanding that, you know, that like, you're everyone's you, and we're all pretty much like, they don't take things personal. Like, you don't know what happened before you.
Yeah, I try to have that lens.
Moment, right? Like, everybody's going through their shit. Everybody's dealing with their issues. Everybody's dealing with the crazy economy, the crazy leadership, the crazy natural disasters, the crazy boss, the crazy school, whatever it is, and the crazy conditions and traumas from their friends, families, and everything around them. So it's just like, breathe, relax. Don't let it disturb your peace, and just really understand that really everyone's doing the best that they possibly can. And for me, that goes a long way. And just seeing them for, you know, seeing myself within them. But truly, I look at people now, I'm just like, I try to look at them as if they're a baby. And then it's so funny, this influencer I'm working with now, it's her and her friend who's another influencer, and they're like, yeah, we're doing this. And then I'm like, you're doing this? And she's like, I'm just a girl. I'm like, relax. Like, you're doing better than most. But I'm just, and, you know, outside, millions of 3.5 million followers. And it's just funny because, like, everyone looks at her like she's on this crazy pedestal and she's being vulnerable with me. Like, I've never done this before. I'm just trying to figure this out.
Yeah, good for her.
I'm like, good for you. You're killing it. But when she said, I'm just a girl, I was like, I saw her as a baby. I'm like, oh, little baby doing business, first business. And it's doing great. And, you know, truly, we never grow up. And I think that's also the secret to life. It's to never grow up.
Yes.
I'll never ask someone how old you are. Ask them how old you feel.
That's so interesting. I feel like a kid.
I know, right?
I feel like a kid. I'm actually 43. I like saying my age. I like saying my age just because we're obviously in a world where, ageism, right? Women, you get to a certain point, you're no good. Obviously, we're finally switching that weird paradigm that people thought.
If you can, please share some light. Because a girl I spoke to recently, she's like, I can't believe I'm going to be 22. I'm like,
oh my gosh.
Chill. Yeah. And another girl just turned 30 with my friends. It was his 41st birthday with his wife, who was also like 43. She's like, I'm 30, my life's over. And she's 43 and has more spirit than she does. And I was just watching. She's like, relax. Life gets better. So if you can share some light.
Life does get better. And as women, it's very challenging because we have been conditioned to, we can't get older, right? And especially as a woman in the entertainment industry, you know, you hit a certain age, you start having gray hair, you can't cast for certain things, or they want somebody that doesn't look your age. But I think we're finally getting out of that mindset. 100%. I'm not afraid of getting older because the older I get, the more alive I feel because I feel better in my skin. I know who I am, right? I'm able to bestow wisdom on people that need it so much. I am getting a lot of gray hair, but but it's one of those things like, I'm getting gray hair. Are you okay with it? Because remember, if I've been programmed to be like, you need to look perfect, you need to look that way, a certain way from a very young age, obviously aging, I was always worried about that. But I'm like, I feel better than ever. I'm healthy. It's such a privilege to age. How many people that do not have that privilege or that are going through it, that are sick, you know? And if you're incredibly healthy and you feel bad because you have wrinkles, like, you're supposed to have wrinkles. Like, trust me, I like a good Botox from time to time. But I also preventative. But I also don't want to get into this weird thing that social media gets in our head, you know, like everybody's looking the same. Right. So we really need to be careful to get out of that world because it's a privilege to age, and I can't wait to get older and just to be a better human. And I think when we really start to get grounded in our humanity, we start to get away from how we're looking. I mean, trust me, I love to still work out, and I obviously want to feel healthy. I want to fit into my dresses, but I'm not a slave to the beauty aspect anymore. Right, because before it was drilled into my mind. Like, trust me, I know.
Especially in your industry.
But especially in our industry, like, trust me, of course, I'm going to wear my fake lashes and my hair extensions, right? But I'm not a slave to it the way I was before, just because I know
It's
who
more
I
for
am.
you.
It's more for me because I want to feel good, and trust me, I know what to do to get the job and how to look presentable on camera. But there's so much more that I bring to the table,
Yeah.
you know, and my mind, my experience, my community, right? And it's all about being so intentional, and it's beautiful when you really step away from that fake filtered world. And trust me, I like a little dip and tuck with the little app. I'm not saying that I'm immune to it, but I think now we're finally stepping away from that thing that does not exist. And it's also a way to control women.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to get into the misogyny of like, you're not good enough. And I think if we all really understand how much power we have as women from a spiritual standpoint and our mind and what we bring to the table outside of our looks, if we can really buy into how amazing we are, the earth would be healed.
Absolutely. You said I'm not good enough, and like I want to, because I mentioned Inside Out too, and I feel like a
Oh,
lot
I
of
love that
people.
movie.
It's so good. I mean, 1 and 2, but when Riley, when anxiety, the emotion started ramping up, and then created that belief system, that primary question that she says, the primary statement that she says to herself. I studied with Dr. DeMartini, and he taught this, and he says that like, we all ask ourselves like this one question that is the underlying thing of your personality, which psychologists were behind Inside Out too, which was I'm not good enough, which that is the primary question. And when doing the shadow work, I speak about this freely, so I'm going to say this. I don't want to know, oh my God, I'm sorry for you, but
No, not at all.
I was abandoned at a Waffle House by accident, of course, by my family when I was 7 years old. And most trauma happens, like the deep-rooted ones happen between the ages 4 and 7. We were eating. I said, I'm going to go to the bathroom. I went to the bathroom. By the time I went out, I see my family driving away. And one family was in one car, I was in the other. So each family, I was over
Like
my uncles.
a Home Alone
Pretty much.
scenario.
Little switcheroo. Yeah. And I remember running down the highway, chasing this car, seeing the car shrink. And then out of nowhere, a car cuts in, breaks my sight. 2 men come out to like grab me. And I'm like, oh my God, first time I'm alone, 7 years old on the side of the highway. I run towards traffic. Eventually a lady comes out. I'm like, she seems good energy. Let's go with her. And I would never forget that I understood, like it was just kind of like an awakening process. This happens in your 30s, by the way. Like it generally, like a lot of these questions kind of answer themselves, especially if you're looking for it. And the way it happened was I told my friend about a mutual who introduced us that reached out to me recently after just stopped being my friend for no reason.
Yeah.
And my friend's like, why are you still holding on to that? You're taking it personal. He was just like clean. He was doing his own shadow work, like going in. And I'm like, well, of course I took it personal. I have abandonment issues. I was abandoned at a Waffle House. And I said that as a joke, as most of us joke about our trauma. But then I realized like, that was some truth.
Yeah.
I answered my own questions in the form of comedy. And I was FaceTime my friend. And my friend sees what's happening in my face. And he goes, what was that? I'm like, I've never said that before. I think there was truth behind it. And he goes, wait, are you having a breakthrough? I go, I think so. And he goes, let's take it deeper. How did that make you feel? And I go, well, I was about to get kidnapped. I was concerned. I was worried. And I was like, oh my God, I am worried all the time. And it's like, worry is not a feeling that you're just like, I'm worried right now. It's like a feeling that's just lingering.
Of course,
and it's
yeah.
just like,
I get anxiety a lot.
yeah. But you know, like, how do you like identify it if you aren't really conscious that you're feeling it? And whenever someone left my life, I would be so upset, and I would, the abandonment issues and the work.
Yeah.
And I remember, like, every time someone left my community, I took that so personally. I took that so personally. And then somebody...
I took it personal, too.
Yeah, but someone left. And I was like, I felt it. And I was like, little trauma. Settle down. And it was interesting because...
You're able to identify it now.
Yeah. And the main thing afterwards was, he goes, what question were you telling yourself? What were you kept telling yourself because of the abandonment worry that always came from it? And I go, I'm not good enough. And that's why I was abandoned. And he goes, that has led to you so positively because you think you're not good enough, but yet that became a chip on your shoulder, and you've done everything you can to over-deliver and do your best, and you can use your trauma. And a lot of people use their trauma to be a force for good, but most people aren't aware of it. Most people aren't conscious of it.
But that's why we're having these conversations.
Exactly. And if just one person became somewhat more conscious of and that's what consciousness is. And when people are, what's a conscious leader? It's like consciousness is a space that awareness like happens, right? So the more conscious you become, the more aware you become. So when I become a conscious individual, like, yes, I always was upset whenever someone left me in my life. And it wasn't something that I was conscious of, but when I became conscious, it wasn't like it appeared. I just became aware of what was already there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of this process. It's not necessarily learning new things. It's identifying. All right.
That
So,
is very, very powerful.
that was deep.
No, that was deep.
That
No,
was
let's
deep.
take a breath. Ooh. Identifying. I love that. We just have to stop being on this autopilot thing. That was very good. Make sure to clip that.
Clip that, chat. Love it. So, I want to, if you can, I'm going to add a new thing to these interviews, and I call it the clip farm. So if you can, at rapid fire, pretend we're clipping each of these.
Okay.
You can clip some rapid fire value that you can give to all the millions and millions of viewers at home.
Okay, I'm going to lean into my strength. So many people want to be able to create content and impact. And a lot of the times people get into their monkey mind as to how they can make that happen. And then they figure out, they think they need to have all the things to make it happen. I will say, and I say to my clients, for example, listen, you want to make impact, you want to create content that really matters, riff with a friend. What we're doing is so powerful because we're creating long form content, and this long form content is going to be able to live for a very long time on your social media and in your brand overall. I would say really lean into what makes you happy, what lights you on fire, and how you want to help people. Sit with a friend and just riff and get into a place of creation. And once you get that long form content, you'll be able to repurpose all of this amazing content and truths and wisdom that is only going to be impactful for your audience. You're able to repurpose it not just for Instagram, you can do it for YouTube Shorts, and you can create an amazing ecosystem from one piece of content. I like to double down on this concept because people don't create content because they think it's too hard. It's not hard, and it could really be the keys to unlock your future.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I gotta say, like, this is for me, like, yeah, content cool, but for me, this is getting together with people and having great conversations where other people can just like oversee. And I've had a conversation with someone. I'm not gonna put them on blast, but afterwards, like, in between, we talk before, we talk after this recording, and afterwards, the person's like, I'll invest $150,000 in an idea if you want to execute on it. I'm like,
isn't that amazing?
I'm like, chill. I was just hanging out and shot. That was a throwaway idea. I have really good ideas. You should if you want. But, good things can happen, especially when you are excited about it, passion. So, of course, chase your passion. And if it's getting together with people and finding an excuse to just put on a camera, do it.
You're not going to lose, and I just encourage you to really step into your message. And I promise you, it sounds so simple, but I always like to take things to basics because that's where greatness happens. We get just overwhelmed with so much what we see online, and then we don't do anything because rightfully so. You're being bombarded with so much. Step into the simpleness of just talking to your friend and see what happens.
Absolutely. So for the 34,000 is the time of this recording, we could just round up to 40,000 entrepreneurs, conscious professionals for the wonderful furlough community. Discord.gg/furlough. If you haven't joined already, what message do you have for them?
Oh my goodness. Try to find a way that you can create impact in your community. And I really say right now, it's really about trying to help your fellow neighbor, really figure out what that may look like. And I think now more than ever, we need each other. So ask yourself right now, what charity can I be a part of? Who can I help? Does my mom need to speak to me? Does my dad need to speak to me? Lean into that, and I promise you will not lose.
Yeah. Of course, because your neighbors can be inside your house, too.
Of course,
so your
absolutely.
family is your community, guys. Remember, that's why I had this conversation last week about Africa. People think Africa's so far behind, but it's like Africa, it's like one country, one heartbeat, and let's say they're starving, they have a little piece of food, they'll share it.
Yeah,
and
it's crazy.
It's like the answers of the West that are seeking is literally in the East. Like, we need more oneness and no more separation. And I believe, we're going straight to there. So be a part of the change. If you want to see the change,
you need to start. Yeah, be the change. Starts with you.
Well, Andrea, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram, official Andrea Ocampo TV, and my company website, hbumediastudio.com.
Lovely. Links are in the description.
Yes, links. You can find me everywhere. LinkedIn, everywhere. All the things.
Lovely. It was absolute pleasure.
I love this guy. I love this guy.
The love is mutual. Appreciate you, and all of you guys. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, leave them, of course, in the comments. We'll make sure I'll get on there. I'll just set up another coffee date, but we're gonna answer every one of these questions.
Yeah, we'll answer all the questions.
And she's also in the Discord community, so feel free to tag her.
Yeah, I haven't been there in a while. I have to say hello.
Yeah, there you go. She'll make her way back. We'll make her come by the event, Startup Booster, all that jazz.
I can't wait.
Yeah, so don't forget to like, subscribe, and let us know your favorite parts. And if you want a part 2, of course, we can make this happen.
100%.
Awesome. Peace and love, everybody. Appreciate you watching. Till next time.